Today I'll be showing you how to locate poor quality cells in a complex mesh. Azore has some great tools to analyze mesh quality, and I'll show you how to use these to pinpoint cells where you might have potential problems. I've just loaded this mesh into Azore. This is a detailed model of the Tie Interceptor with close to 3 million cells. By selecting the grid menu and check grid, Azore will perform a number of measurements on the mesh itself. Okay, so Azore has finished completing the grid check, and it's printed the results of these measurements in the log messages menu. So here's the data that Azore is giving us. They're showing us the number of cells with each value and a number of different metrics: skewness, orthogonality. There's a brief explanation of each metric below the data table. And underneath that, you will find a warning message. Here you can find an explanation of how Azore will handle the poor quality cells in the mesh. Azore is completely transparent of how it is applying cell mitigation logic in the solver process. You can also customize how Azore handles poor quality cells. This can all be useful to give you a general overview of mesh quality, but just from here you won't be able to see where these cells are in relation to the model geometry. For that, we will use some of Azore's post-processing tools. First, let's take a look at the mesh itself. I can turn off the faces of the model, and under the Edges tab, select All Mesh, which shows an outline of the polyhedral mesh. From here, navigate to the Manage Post menu under Database, where we will press New Cell ISO Select, and this will generate a surface based on individual cell data. Then choose what field to apply to the surface. In this case, select Mesh from the first drop-down, and then the second drop-down shows all the mesh statistics that are available. We could look at non-orthogonal faces, the least squares condition number, or cells that have weak connections. Let's select Interior Face Non-Orthogonal to see if there are any cells in the mesh that are non-orthogonal or have issues with planar deviation. For this example, we only want to see the worst cells, so I'm going to choose anything that has a value from 0.9 to 1. This will be those cells with faces that are nearly perpendicular to each other. Uncheck the Skin Only box. Press OK and close. Notice that the surface is now listed under the Post Surface list to the left. It's shown in red, which tells us that Azore still needs to generate the surface. Press the Generate button below for it to be displayed in the model render area. Go to the Faces tab and ensure that your ISO surface is turned on and highlighted. The cells are difficult to locate with the mesh turned on. Let's turn the mesh off to see the cells that are highlighted. Right now they are quite small, but we can zoom in to see them better. By pressing the Control key and the left mouse button to click on the cell, we make that location a new rotational center of our viewing area. This way we can rotate the cell so that we can see its geometry better. This cell is clearly non-orthogonal, and you can see the perpendicular faces right here. We can turn on the edges so that we can locate this in the larger geometry of the model. If you right-click and highlight surfaces, then Azore will give you an approximate location of this cell with an XYZ coordinate shown in pink at the upper left. We can zoom back out and recenter our model to find other poor quality cells. So again, this is another non-orthogonal cell. Let's control click so that we can rotate this cell around. And you can see some of the non-orthogonality. From here, we could generate additional cell isosurfaces to highlight cells with different mesh qualities. You can see how this is a great way to identify and find poor quality cells in Azore.